Hey, small business people and lovers of good stories in general. Welcome to episode 16 of Small Business War Stories with David Rice of Flow Nonfiction. And this is also a part of the Soul of America tour, like last week's episode, and like all the episodes from here on until November. I'm really excited to share with you my conversation with David. Flow Nonfiction is a really interesting company that basically helps brands tell their story. And one of the projects that David was involved in was with a company called Deluxe, where they did a reality TV series involving small businesses in the town of Wabash, Indiana. And that's been really popular in Hulu. And we compare notes because my trip around the country with the Soul of America tour is actually a similar endeavor where I'm going out talking to different people about their small businesses. And David is also a small business operator himself because he runs his company Flow Nonfiction, where he helps people tell their stories. So we got a lot of really interesting points of comparison and a lot of really interesting conversation. Also, David used to be a pop star, and he's got a really cool poster in his office of him looking like David Bowie, like back in the '80s. So that was that was also really cool. As part of the Soul of America tour, this episode is brought to you by Badger Mapping. Badger is basically an app that makes it really, really easy for you to map your sales routes. So I used it to map the Soul of America tour, and you don't have to think about where do I need to go next. Everything's mapped for you, and you can put your schedule in and put where you're going next, and it's very, very easy. If you manage a sales team, it is very, very well reviewed by people in the Apple App Store, and it's been very successful. If you tell them that you came from Small Business War Stories, they'll give you 2 free months. Then the episode is also brought to you by Tecovas Boots. If you're tired of paying $700 for handcrafted boots, you need to go to Tecovas because they make 700 quality boots for a lot less because they cut out the middleman. They are amazing. I wore a pair every single day of the Soul of America tour. They're very comfortable, very stylish. I got a lot of compliments. And you can head over to Tecovas Boots. That's TECOVAS boots.com and check them out. I have their ropers in bourbon, and they're awesome. And last but not least, we're also brought to you by Impact Crates. Impact Crates are made in the USA. They're dog safety crates, so you can travel with your pup, and he or she can be really safe in your truck. And they're made out of aluminum. They're very, very light. I traveled again every single day. I had to load and unload that crate from my truck during the tour, and it was way easier than any other crate really that I've ever owned. If you want to go get yourself a great safety crate, you can use code MUDDY20, that's MUDDY 20, that's my dog's name, and you get 20% off. And like every episode of Small Business War Stories, this one's also brought to you by Proven.com, a leading small business hiring software tool that I founded. Without further ado, I want to introduce you to David Rice from Flow Nonfiction and episode 16 of Small Business War Stories. Small Business War Stories. Small businesses are the soul of America. And this is where they tell their stories. I am your host, Pablo Fuentes. And we are live here with David Rice. And David works with, you're the founder in one of the principles of Flow?
That's right. Yeah, myself and Matt Naylor are co-founders and
Okay.
principals, and we've been in business together for coming up on 9 years, I think.
That is awesome. And your company's name is Flow Nonfiction.
That's right.
Space.
Right. The space is important, and ultimately, maybe even omitting the nonfiction,
Okay.
especially not just because it's a little clumsy to say, but
Sure.
It's not entirely reflective of the direction that we found ourselves going and
Awesome.
what we see for ourselves in the future.
Sounds good. Well, today I am almost, we were talking about this before, it's almost like I am interviewing myself, and then you're used to being on my side of things because you have actually run, and we'll get to it a little bit later in the podcast, but a similar series with small business owners called Small Business Revolution. and we'll get to that. But you're used to interviewing people on the other side of the mic, right?
That's right. I mean, my partner really does more of that by far than I do, but I'm certainly used to thinking of things from your perspective.
Cool,
so,
awesome.
But I'll do my best to.
I'm glad we get to switch seats for today. So tell me a little bit more about Flow. What do you guys do, and how did the business start?
We started sort of as a response to a need that we saw in the market for brands to be able to tell stories of the philanthropic work they were doing, of the social good they were doing, in a way that wasn't too contrived or self-congratulatory. We had done some work with the Clinton Global Initiative through a great organization here in Austin called Students of the World. It's a nonprofit connected a bit to GST&M.
Sure.
And Matt Naylor was editing these short films, and I was asked to do the music for him. We were both donating our time, and essentially found ourselves making about 20 little shorts that described, what Procter & Gamble was doing for African communities, with their Pure product, for example.
Okay.
Things like this. Hopefully that's Procter & Gamble. I think it is. But we found that there was some missing link here, because all of these were being done by another nonprofit itself, the Students of the World group, and being shot by students, and it felt like to me that really companies like that should be paying for this these things, and not asking everyone to just volunteer their time.
Makes sense.
So right about that time, I had just moved to Austin a few years prior to that, and had become friends with a woman named Lisa Pearson, who is fabulous woman who comes from the PR background, and I told her about this little, germ of an idea, and she said, "Oh wow, well this is there's a name for this actually, David. It's called cause marketing." I was like, "Oh, cause marketing, never heard of that." She's like, "Yeah, that's actually a real thing, and it's in this really emergent field. And I would really like to introduce you to some of my colleagues in New York that represent Procter & Gamble brands that are always looking for innovative ideas and how to tell stories."
Yeah. So in one sentence, what is cause marketing? Or
cause marketing.
2 sentences.
Well, okay. Yeah, I was going to have to keep it short because I have a tendency to ramble. But cause marketing is essentially a brand, a company that has developed a cause internal to their own company, or is supportive of a cause outside of their company. So, for example, our first job ever, our first big job, was for Downy, the fabric softener, Procter & Gamble. They had discovered an organization called Quilts for Kids that essentially it's a volunteer network of quilters all over the country that that get together, and they have these days where they knit these beautiful quilts and then deliver them to hospitals for kids that are there for these extended stays. They've got long-term care going on. Just something kind of fun and unique, and they try to kind of customize them and stuff. So that so they financially support Quilts for Kids. And in the case of our partnership with the organization and with DeVries PR, we built a campaign around telling that story, right? So what does it look like to make these quilts, and who are they for, and taking people through the whole experience of it.
So telling that story.
Exactly, telling the story. Essentially for that piece, we found 2 kids at Texas Children's Hospital in Houston. And got their backstories, and then followed the sort of birth of these quilts. Talked to the quilters, talked to the organization that came up with that whole program.
Cool.
And it was really it was a touching piece, and it was a huge success for the brand. They got everything they wanted to get from it. At the time, I was so new to marketing, and I really kind of still am, that I didn't even really understand what they were talking about these.
But you're
metrics
not
and
new to
things.
storytelling,
But
so we're going to talk a little
All
bit
right.
later about your background in music and your music endeavors and
You're good.
your amazing '80s poster that you have in your recording studio. But let's talk a little bit about storytelling. So storytelling is a little bit of a lost art. So I feel like you have a lot of people in the Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat generation who tell these, micro stories where you have like these snippets. But storytelling as a more medium to long form art is not as prominent as it used to be. How do you think about that in the context of doing this marketing?
We've thought about it a lot. I mean, even when we were first, when we first started out. Facebook was brand new, and brands were using it but didn't really know how, and it was just it was kind of the Wild West in that respect for social media, pre-Twitter, much pre-Instagram, all these things. But we had an intuition early on, like that. Man, we just made an 11-minute piece. Like, no way anyone's gonna spend 11 minutes watching something. And we used to joke about like one of these days it's just going to be a GIF, and we're going to change our name to GIF Docs, and it's going to be a 2-frame little animated thing, and we're going to have to figure out how to tell a story within those 2 frames. So in some ways, I think a lot of storytelling has gone in that direction. It's sort of this, let's figure out the most concise way, get someone's attention. If we can hold them for 10 seconds, we've won. I mean, I think there's truth to that. I think that you need to be able to put forth some. I hate the word content, but I never know a good synonym for it.
Okay.
But put forward some work that grabs someone's attention. But I think what we've discovered is that because we've been really lucky and had some brands trust not only us but themselves and their own stories enough to say, okay, actually, you know what? I think people will stick with this for 14, 15 minutes if we make it as good as a TV show, if we give it the resources to really make it something that someone wants to watch. And the first, that's not just about a big budget or the best cameras or, all that stuff, which are, part of it. But it's also about the brand manager or the client having the courage and the balls to get out of the way of the story and let their brand be a little character in it and a voice, but not to not make it about the brand. Otherwise, it instantly feels like an ad and it's gone. And that's sort of a long game play.
So how can a small business take those lessons and apply them to their own marketing? So maybe a small business that somebody who's listening to this program doesn't have a lot of those most expensive cameras or the biggest resources. How can these lessons that you've learned about storytelling be applied to small businesses telling their story effectively?
Wow, that's a great question, because with us it's sort of a case of the cobbler's kids have no shoes, because we've got these, sort of fairly dormant social sites ourselves, Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and all this. And so I would, just as a disclaimer, anyone who's, is looking at any of those thinking, I'm not taking advice from that guy, like he hadn't put anything on Facebook for 6 weeks. That may be true, but our business is essentially in working with other brands and corporations to be mindful of their storytelling. So anyhow, and you mentioned the expensive cameras and all this. That's really that's a real perk. If you're trying to do a certain kind of thing.
Sure.
But I think I think a great Instagram channel that is populated by beautiful pictures or almost beautiful pictures or pictures with a filter that looks cool. I mean, whatever tools you have, if you are just aware of these kind of principles of, first of all, staying out of the way. Let's
talk about those principles.
Let's talk about the principles.
What are the basic principles that people need to think about?
Now, I've never articulated them or even thought what they are.
Love
or tried to put a name.
Let's
know.
Make them up right now.
Oh, wow. Okay, so stay out of the way. That's a simple way to put it, right?
Sure.
which is not to say that, you don't get to get any glory, or, some people are afraid, well, oh man, I'm putting all this time and I'm not even talking about myself. What are people aren't even going to know it's me. I think it's far more valuable for your brand, I'll just keep using that word, to be perceived as someone who celebrates others.
Sure.
And roots for people that are in their field to succeed. Not so much competitors, although you certainly could be nice to your competitors.
Right.
But in the case of the small business revolution, right?
Yeah. So maybe that's a good time to
I think so,
that.
because this is a principle that really has been really adhered to throughout this campaign. And
so what is the small business revolution? What did you guys do? And then let's not lose that we're going to use your principles of storytelling to tell people how they can tell their story.
I'm sensing like a LinkedIn post or something about this whole thing. So Small Business Revolution is the collaboration of Flow with a woman named Amanda Brinkman, who is the head of marketing at a 102-year-old now company based out of Minneapolis called Deluxe.
Okay.
So Deluxe for years was known as the people that print the checks. You go to the bank, you open a new account.
Sure.
They send you off with a toaster and a box full of checks printed by Deluxe.
Got it.
So built a wonderful business over the years. Fortunately, had the foresight 20, 30 years ago to start, seeing that the writing was on the wall for the such a narrow market, and started to develop a lot of products for small businesses, web hosting and email marketing and things like this.
Okay.
But we're still sort of struggling on how to get this name that was associated with this legacy product, right? To be associated with something forward.
Bigger.
And so Amanda had the I think courage and vision to set out the first year, and it's very similar to what you're doing right now, which is now I'm going to start interviewing you, but I won't. Which is to say, hey, we're going to find 100 small businesses, across the country. We as Deluxe, the new Deluxe, is a champion of small business.
Right.
And so let's go get to know some of them.
That sounds like the Soul of America tour coming up to you soon.
Yeah. So they're not Deluxe clients. They're not required to be a client.
Right.
They don't. It's not about that. It's like, okay, we're gonna prove it. Like, we really care. And so we spent the year, finding, sourcing, vetting, and then ultimately telling the stories of 100 different businesses across the country.
Okay. Wow.
Which was a mammoth task.
Yeah.
But
I'm just doing it with a podcast. I can't even imagine doing it with film and scripts.
It was what we did, because we knew, at first she was like, so let's make 100 videos, and we're like, wow, okay, first of all, like, I don't know if you got the budget to understand what that would cost,
right.
but also, like, we're a small business ourselves. We'd have to start farming stuff out, and it's going to lose its vision and all this. So ultimately, what we landed on was really cool. It was 12 short films that Matt Naylor directed, and then the other 88 were photo essays. So we hired some great photographers to go around, and they'd go into the ballet studio in Kansas, or
Sure.
the barbershop in Chicago, or whatever it is,
Yeah.
and just get to know them and take these beautiful photos and write some write up their interview, and we'd put copy and all this. And so we used all those assets to build an Instagram following and a Facebook following, and it did. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but I know that it was wildly successful, so much that for the second year, they wanted to keep going. In fact, they wanted to do something even bigger.
Yeah.
So that's when we teamed up with Robert Herjavec, who is a star on Shark Tank.
Sure.
And basically kind of reimagined the whole series as more of a reality show, right?
Yeah.
So so the basic premise is, find a small town in America who, for whatever reason, as the big boxes have moved in or industries moved out, their main street is sort of shriveled up a little bit,
Okay.
and find a town that really has a drive and a commitment to growing the soul of their community back.
Yeah.
And so we did that. We sent out requests for nominations, and ultimately Wabash, Indiana, won the contest. So,
Okay.
so
How many people live in Wabash, Indiana?
Oh boy, I should know. It's under 20,000,
Okay.
well under. And so a lot of folks from Deluxe, the actual, not just the marketing team, but the people that actually do the work for clients,
Yeah.
which is actually marketing work in and of itself. So that's a little meta. But,
It is kind of meta.
So basically spent the summer there,
Yeah.
and found out what, we chose 6 businesses on Main Street, and really got to know their needs and their market and their short-sightedness in
Okay.
what they thought their market was.
Sure.
And so the Deluxe team, did all kinds of things: new websites, new logos, different strategies for social media and all these things. And then they also gave they bought things that were needed. Whether it was a new ovens or storefronts or doors. I mean, all kinds of things that were just really like infrastructure.
Okay.
And also made a beautiful park and signage in the main street, and really just overhauled it, and we shot the whole thing.
Okay.
So
Is that out there now? I know.
It is.
I know.
It is.
Season 1. I saw some of those, but I didn't know that the season.
So this is
Okay.
the show is called Small Business Revolution Main Street.
Okay.
It's on Hulu, and it is the most watched reality show on Hulu.
Wow.
And this is this is not something that goes through a network. This is all paid for by a for-profit brand.
Yeah.
And what is so great about it, and how this is 10 minutes later, but the way I think that this really illustrates that principle of staying out of the way,
Right.
is that that Amanda is in the show. She's basically the co-star with Robert, and she is represents. She's sort of the voice of the company, but we grow to trust her and the other characters that are from Deluxe that are in the show as they appear, because we get to see their humanity,
Right.
and we realize that we see them actually helping people, and it's not it just avoids this feeling of overt commercialism, and I think that the show has wonderful folks in Wabash that people fell in love with, and it's really made an impact. In fact, we're going back in a couple of weeks to
Wow.
do a sort of where are they now
Like
episode, right?
Follow-up. Yeah.
But the results for the company have been extraordinary. I mean, the return on the investment has been way more than I think they even expected, and it's, of course, we're thrilled about that because everybody wins and we get to make another show. And
we can distill our list of storytelling principles to stay out of the way and be authentic.
Thank you. pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, some that comes really naturally for some people. Some people are just live their lives that way.
Yeah.
But I would say to anyone listening that's maybe afraid, like, oh, but my boss is going to say, well, where's the return? Like, where's the product? Like, you should stay on that frame 6 seconds longer or whatever. I know it's tough, like, to find the courage to challenge those sorts of old ways of thinking, but that's what they are. They're old ways of thinking.
Yeah.
And I think that anyone who feels like, all this new, way of marketing, doesn't make any money for anyone. And it's just like, where's the product? And I get that.
But it does take a long time. So
it does.
So that's the thing about us. So with Proven, right, what we've done, and interjecting myself, I try to stay out of the way as much as I can, which is it's something I'm learning more and more every show that I do. But with Proven, we have invested in basically not advertising, proven it, and like providing value through content for over a year now.
Yeah.
And this podcast is a way to continue to do that. And it's I don't expect this to pay off anywhere in the near term. It's much more about really, authentically doing this and getting on the road and meeting these folks. So their patience is, I think, a big one. So stay out of the, we have a list of principles.
Yes, thank you.
Stay out of the way.
Be authentic, and be patient. Yes, you're actually distilling this in a wonderful way.
And keep it simple.
And keep it simple. And make sure that whatever story you're telling, it's got to relate to what you do as a company. I mean, that's another big one. Like, yes, you want to stay out of the way, but it's not ingenuine to let it be known that yes, you are a human being with this company and that you provide services and. I mean, there's a transparency that's acceptable, and I think that, so if it makes sense, for example, that Downey does quilts. We worked with Tide. They have laundry detergent. They have Loads of Hope, where after a hurricane, they bring the truck and they wash everyone's clothes. Or, there's you need to make sure that the story that you're telling is relevant and germane to, because the audience that you want to build is the audience that will ultimately buy your product, whatever you're doing.
Now, can storytelling backfire? Can things go wrong? Can you think of a time when maybe somebody had the best intentions and wanted to do, and you don't have to name names.
Sure.
But it's like, oh, that probably didn't work.
Oh boy. Let me think here. You can edit out this silence.
No, that's okay. I don't edit.
Okay,
it's
well,
all...
I better jump
no,
on it.
That's okay. It's all authentic.
I can't think of it. Maybe if I just start talking, something will come out.
Yeah.
That's maybe not the greatest strategy for communicating, but there's certainly you can wind up looking. Well, you can wind up failing if you don't observe the principles. I guess. I mean. If that, I think we
so
can make
maybe
that
one
jump.
way to fail would be if somebody was constantly interjecting themselves in the story and making it like more seem like an advertisement as opposed to a genuine story.
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, that just reminded me another example of something that I saw recently that I thought was really beautifully done, and was this Yeti short film. That was a profile on a sign maker, a neon sign maker here in Austin.
That's right, on First Street, right?
Yeah, and I thought that was very well done. And it seems to me like, and I don't know, but it seems like they're trying to maybe start building out a whole content world that's really kind of independent of the coolers. I'm not sure, but just a little plug for that. I thought that was a great work.
Okay.
But you don't. I don't know. A lot of, I guess, where I'm coming from our history of work here does relate to the cause side of things. Okay. And so that's just full of horror stories of like just being insensitive.
Okay. I mean, tell me more about that.
Well, there's a certain finesse and required when you're telling stories of ultimately tragedy and heartache. I mean, so we went to Haiti, for example, after the earthquake there, whatever it was, 7 or 8 years ago. And I think we did a really nice, honorable job of telling the story of how Tide, invested money into the hospital to rebuild and make a laundry room because everyone was washing all the hospital sheets by hand up until that point. And they did a lot of great things. But when we were there, there were a couple of people shouting, about profiting from our misfortunes.
Yeah.
And that's a little bit like, oh shit, like that doesn't feel good at all. Like,
right.
And so I think that's one example of just a watch out.
So there's nuance and finesse in this.
There is nuance, and what we're doing now, with Small Business Revolution, isn't so much a cause. I mean, that's one thing I would say about our business in general is I think we've, whereas we still work with some nonprofits and whatnot, we. The cause marketing thing, in that really literal, we're the brand, we support this thing, tell the story about how the people that we're supporting benefited from the money that we gave, and at the end put a bottle of laundry detergent on the movie. That model is sort of kind of a little bit in the past.
Right.
And so now we're just, again, I think more about, celebrate good. That's
Right.
that's what
But that
we got
takes,
on the website.
like we said, a lot more patience, a lot more getting out of the way, and a lot more authenticity.
It does. And I think it sets a tone that, because all this is happening online, I think it sets a tone online that that is inspiring and helps elevate the conversation, out of the, out of the so-called the fake news or the, just the ugly stuff that's around. I think, when you've got something that connects, at a soul kind of heart level, it works.
Yeah. Cool. So let's talk a little bit about your music background. So you were kind enough to invite me and my friend Eric to a private taping concert in your studio here. You have an amazing studio here that has like every piece of awesome equipment that I would ever want to have for a recording studio. And there's a poster on the wall there with your name on it, and you're sitting there looking kind of like I don't know, like it's almost like a David Bowie-esque vibe. So okay. You were involved in the some intense musical projects, and you have a Grammy, right?
Do I? No, I don't.
Okay.
Well, no, I had to. I mean, I would know if I did, but
okay.
But I was in. There was a nomination that happened,
okay.
But that's another story.
Okay, well, I mean, that's awesome.
It's a little loose. But anyway, so, I knew from the time I was 4 years old that I was going to be in music my whole life.
Yeah.
I mean, there was never any question of that. The challenge was just like trying to figure out, well, how is that going to work?
Sure.
And so, so I was in bands all through high school, and then I was like a DJ in high school for the dances and making money, and I was doing stuff in my teens that my friends were like, dude, this guy's always got a fat wallet because he's doing these weird gigs.
Yeah.
Because I was playing the organ at real estate auctions. Like, I mean, literally, I was like 15. And they're like, they've got all these foreclosed houses and these awful slides and this guy. And he's like, it's like a baseball game. Bum, 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 bum.
That is amazing.
And I make like $300 a pop on a Saturday.
That's
and,
beautiful.
Then I'd take my friends to Iron Maiden or Rush or whatever. But
yeah.
I know we're running out. We got to be concise here.
Yeah, I'm just trying to tie the music world to storytelling. So
all through my 20s, I made records. I was a songwriter. I'm still a songwriter, although that's evolved over the years more to music that supports the film work that we do here, our actual product. So that's still a big piece of it, and why that studio really can exist. I think that it was sort of that unique, me coming from that background, and then Matt, coming from being a huge fan of film, that made this interesting chemistry happen, because we weren't both we didn't come from the same backgrounds, and he's much younger than I am, and we've got different tastes and things or whatever. But I think they converge in a way that really that complements each other, and not just in a one-to-one way of the music I write works for the films, but just a whole perspective, because I think I've just, maybe just because I've been around longer or something.
I mean, to be a good musician, you have to be a good storyteller in some way, right?
I think so.
I think so. Actually, not everybody thinks that. I think that.
Yeah. Well, there's all kinds of musicians, right? I mean, there's people that there's singer-songwriters that stand up and they talk as much as they sing. I do that a fair amount. Unfortunately, a lot of what I say is it doesn't make a whole lot of sense sometimes. But anyway,
that's okay.
But to be serious, I mean, they're inextricably related, storytelling and music. Even if it's not just about and now I'm telling a story, or the lyrics tell a story. Yeah. Just actual music, the notes, the sounds convey a story. Emotion, and it's not a story maybe that you even need to find the beginning was this and the middle is this, and then it goes to the bank, and it doesn't matter. It still expresses an emotion and a journey, I think. You
elicit a human response, which is what a story does. Okay, cool. So before we wrap up, as a small business operator, somebody who does, is also wears a hat of running this agency with your business partner, Can you think of a time when things went wrong, and how did you deal with that?
Well, yeah. I mean, we've had a couple of challenges along the way with partnerships. The original partner that we started the company with, ultimately, we felt like that we were going to have a leaner operation with just Matt and me, and that was really really hard, terribly hard, because you get to know someone as a business partner, and it's hard to distinguish between business and friendship and all these things. And so there's some really hard decisions that we had to make. And so there was some.
How did you navigate that? I mean, I was just telling you, I just kind of put my story out there. My original business partner and I broke up as business partners. How did you navigate that?
It was tough. I mean, it wasn't. I can't say that I'm completely proud of the my communication during that period, or the way, the way it all went down. But I think it's been almost 3 years now, and I think and it's it's starting to heal, and as a business, we it took we took a bit of a hit because there's a lot of cost involved with that. It's like a divorce, really.
Yeah.
But fortunately, we've just kept growing every year. I mean, we've never taken a loan out. We've never been in debt. We don't have any investors.
Okay.
And we've got a house full of 10 people working right now as we speak.
That's amazing.
And it's incredible.
So where do you see it going in the next 5-10 years? Where do you want Flow Space Nonfiction to go?
We're going to continue to work with some core clients, even if it's just one, even if it's just Deluxe and Small Business Revolution, as long as they'll have us and as long as that's getting views and results. But alongside of the commissioned work like that, we've got 3 different shows in development right now that are original content that we're really excited about. One's a music show, one's a food show, and one's a veterans issues show with a fitness guy named Big Sarge. A whole other story. It's amazing. And so we are actively looking for avenues for those to get out. And I think we're gonna try some non-traditional paths for that, and draw on our experience, with working with brands that fund these shows that we've made. To try to take it to some folks and say, hey, Gold's Gym, we've got a fitness trainer with a hell of a story who's already had mega views on Netflix on this series we did for Wounded Warrior Project.
Sure.
Maybe you want to think about paying for a show. Let's put it on Hulu or whatever.
Makes sense.
But the big difference is really that it's ideas that we generate here and then search for partners rather than vice versa.
Okay. Awesome. Where can people find your business? What are your social media handles, and where do you put your? You were talking about the cobbler, the kid without his shoes.
The cobbler still has no shoes. Well, let's see. You can go to flownonfiction.com.
Okay.
Where and we've got all the social links there. I honestly. I'm not even sure if I don't want to say what they are because the handles, because I might get them wrong.
Okay.
But yeah, there's a lot of our work there. We're also,
and people can watch Small Business Revolution on Hulu.
On Hulu, yeah. Just go to Hulu and search for it, and you'll see tons of stuff. There's
learn about Wabash, Indiana, and what goes on there.
Yeah,
I'm about to go learn what goes on all the way up to Saginaw, Michigan.
I am
back
so jealous. I really, really am. That sounds amazing.
I'm excited. Well, thank you so much for spending a little bit of time with me.
Absolutely.
And it's been an honor to have David Rice with me from Flow Space Nonfiction on the show.
Great. Thank you, brother.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you for listening to Small Business War Stories. If you enjoy the show, share it with a friend, or you can subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, or on our blog at blog.proven.com. If you have an idea for us, we'd love to hear it. Please email us at podcast@proven.com. See you next time. Small business war stories. Small businesses are the soul of America. And this is where they tell their stories. I am your host, Pablo Fuentes.